income generating activities and mentorship of the VSLAs, they can articulate their issues better.
Ende ayu anatoka mana amo member to kiano ni makwana bala ni no ni mana ambu mitebo danando ma eto na menda boya monyo menda boya skali ni nyango manenge yitu yondola mana ambo ya
na yu ajukola daga kuni bas.
Ende ayu anatoka mana amo member to kiano ni makwana bala ni no ni mana ambu mitebo danando ma eto na menda boya monyo menda boya skali ni nyango manenge yitu yondola mana ambo ya
na yu ajukola daga kuni bas.
Ende ayu anatoka mana amo member to kiano ni makwana bala ni no ni mana ambu mitebo danando ma eto na menda boya monyo menda boya skali ni nyango manenge yitu yondola mana ambo ya
na yu ajukola daga kuni bas.
Ende ayu anatoka mana amo member to kiano ni makwana bala ni no ni mana ambu mitebo danando ma eto na menda boya monyo menda boya skali ni nyango manenge yitu yondola mana ambo ya
Check, check, 1 2 1 2 1 2, mic check 1 2. Nanisikia? Speaking, mic test. Huh? Yeah. Ina peak, umecheki levels.
One, two, 1 2 1 2, mic check. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Unanisikia? Nimetoa ama nivae? Oh. 1 2 1 2. Hi.
A very good morning to you joining us virtually. Kindly allow us to start in a few minutes. In the meantime, we will be playing a few videos. Yeah, feel free to tell us where you're joining us from the chat. If you're joining us from East Africa, if you're joining us from around the world, let us know where you're joining us from. But in the meantime, we'll be playing videos before we start. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Who are virtual cannot hear me. This is for us. So I'd like to request, probably in the next 5 minutes, there should be no necessary movements here unless you're part of the program, so that you can avoid cross-camera movements. So I'll position someone at the door so that you can avoid these cross movements here, even as we plan to start in the next 5 minutes. But other,
so they end up having very low income or no incomes at all. Another challenge is with regard to regular shocks. For example, you have drought, floods, or sometimes an epidemic.
Profit is a rural finance program supported by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, which is a UN agency, and the government of Kenya. Financial graduation is a subcomponent of technical services. The rationale for selecting financial graduation to a program which is essentially rural finance was to address a segment of the population that is deemed to be too poor, that they can't interact in the financial and commodity markets.
The graduation approach, pioneered by BRAC in Bangladesh in 2002, is the creative and innovative solution that accompanies the poorest households on their own pathway out of poverty. Through comprehensive and sequenced steps, the graduation approach supports families in their own journeys to build resilience and sustainable livelihoods. Results from this evidence-backed method are inspiring adoption in over 40 countries by NGOs and governments. Using technical expertise from BRAC and in cooperation with the Government of Kenya, CARE and the BOMA project are implementing the Profit Financial Graduation Program, which targets 2,600 women and youth.
BOMA works with the extreme poor in the arid and semi-arid areas of northern Kenya. We empower women, build resilient communities and families, instill hope, and change the conversation about what's possible. Samburu County has some of the worst basic poverty indicators. I believe it's in the top 15 poorest counties in Kenya.
CARE's mission is to eradicate poverty, and in Kenya, we target women and girls as our impact group, and we look at poverty that is caused by gender inequality. The program that we're working on right now is in Chuso sub-county of the larger Kitui County.
The families in the Profit Financial Graduation Program receive 6 critical interventions. They include an income-generating asset, a consumption stipend, links to the National Health Insurance Program, savings support through groups, training on social and health messages, and mentorship through household visits.
This project has brought about a lot of changes for the participants in Samburu. The women that are participating in the project now have an income where they're, through the businesses that they've started with support from the project, so they have a regular income, they have access to better food, so they're much more their enrollment in the NHIF. And I think for me the most compelling change that I've seen in the women is their agency, their empowerment as members of the community, as women. They're much more in control of their own destinies.
Most of the beneficiaries will tell you that they were voiceless. So as a result of being mentored in terms of household visits to emphasize what they have been learning, and in terms of mentorship at their income generating activities and mentorship at the VSLAs, they can articulate their issues better.
Ende ayu anatoka mana amo member to kiano ni makwana bala ni no ni mana ambu mitebo nando ma eto na menda ko boya monyo menda boya skali ni nyango manenge yiti ndola mana ambo ya.
Once again, a very good morning to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the Kenya Changemaker map. My name is Zahra Lethome from Ashoka, East Africa, and we will be hosting this event today in partnership with Care Kenya. And what a better time this is coming, given that we are marking 20 years of enhancing social entrepreneurship in East Africa, and also spearheading the Ashoka vision of everyone a change maker in the region. The Changemaker Map is an initiative under a broader project by the Austria Development Corporation, bringing together a group of organizations being Ashoka Austria, Ashoka East Africa, Devi, Care Austria, Care Kenya, and PwC. Other initiatives under this project include the Visionary Program, which is an executive program by Ashoka and partners, and the Impact Transfer Program aimed at supporting social entrepreneurs in transferring their impact from one geographical region to another. At different points during this session, we will be sharing links to the programs and to the website for you to be well versed with the organization. The organization, Ashoka, is spearheading social entrepreneurship at a time when Africa is thriving as a location for social entrepreneurship and change making, having the highest numbers of people recording early stage social entrepreneurship and broadly change making activities in the region. There is an increasing field in the form of social innovation, startups, incubators, accelerators, and the emergence of social finance. The launch today is going to provide a glimpse into the panning out in Kenya of social entrepreneurship and the forms it is taking in the different sectors, given that we conducted this particular program last year, interviewing social entrepreneurs and learning about the sector in Kenya. We welcome you all to stay throughout the entire program. Towards the end, we hope to support the growth of social ventures and advance the change-making movement in Kenya. We also hope at the end of the event, we will have made new connections that will help improve on transformative partnerships and collaborative impact. Before we get started, we do know that we have speakers joining in virtually and audience members. Just a few reminders to get us through smoothly. For the speakers and panelists joining in virtually, a kind reminder to please ensure that you have good connection. If not, kindly switch off your video to preserve your audio quality. Once you're done speaking, please do ensure that you mute your microphone function. To our virtual audience members, and I can see you're already using the functionality, please ensure that you relay your questions, comments, and kindly just use the chat functionality to relay any information or any question you have for the speakers. Towards the end of each session, we will have a Q&A session, and we will try to get most of them answered. For in-person housekeeping, we will be having bathroom breaks and tea breaks within the course of the program. This is both for virtual and in-person attendees. As shared by the Ministry of Health, we have kindly placed your seats in a way to observe social distancing. Kindly ensure that we preserve that. And we also have hand sanitizers and extra masks in case you need that. For online attendees, in case you're having any challenges joining in or you need assistance in any way, please do reach us out at Ashoka East Africa at ashoka.org. That is Ashoka EA at ashoka.org. And with that said, it is now my pleasure to introduce and welcome our host for the day, Ms. Catherine Mwangi. She is the head of TV production and is a seasoned broadcast media executive at Kenya Television Network, KTN. She has 20 years experience in television and related services. She is a renowned creator and storyteller with a vision to ensure that Africa's stories are seen, heard, and acknowledged for their authenticity and social integrity. Karibu, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Makofi ziko wapi? We have to be awake this morning because today is a beautiful day and we're here to celebrate. The word is celebration for today. So Ashoka East Africa, in partnership with Care Kenya, have come together, and because of the initiative, we are launching Kenya Changemakers map today, and that's a really, really big deal. So makofi to those two organizations. No, until we get it right. Yes. So thank you also to our panelists already here. I can see everyone is present, ready to kick off, ready to kick start. And it will just be a good thing for you to say good morning to your neighbor. Tujuane. The one beside you and the one behind you. Say good morning, yes. Okay, next step is get to know their names. It's always good to know someone's name. Even if it's the crew members, I can see Honorable Senior Counsel Martha Karua relating with the cameraman. So get to know each other's names, that's very important. Kirago, have you known the name of your neighbor at the back? At the back? Okay. So we all know, thank you very much for that. We all know that life as we know it changed last year, 2020. So earlier on, I was saying to someone who mentioned something in 2014, and I said, wow, what were we doing in 2014? And so now we are living in new days. You could call them new days. And that calls for new ways of thinking, new ways of how we do things. And so having this conversation today couldn't have come at a better time, because then we get to hear from policymakers, people with knowledge and insight, especially in the areas of social enterprise, on how we navigate these days that we live in. So we'll be looking at, with the Changemaker map launch, where we have been, where we are now, where we are going, and what tools we need to get there. So it's a very invigorating conversation and very invigorating topic. And we'll also get to be shown the results of this Changemaker map launch document. So it's a beautiful day. So without further ado, I would like to invite our hosts here today at Tangaza University College, which is where this event is taking place physically. And we also have an online audience tuning in from all over the world. And to just set us off and welcome us to the institution, allow me to bring to the podium Professor David Wangombe, who's the Vice Chancellor Designate of Tangaza University College. Sir, you're welcome. Kofi kwake.
I think I have sufficient distance so I can move my mask. The Honorable Lady Justice Malakome, Judge of the High Court, Court of Appeal of Kenya. I know she's on the way, but allow me to congratulate her on her nomination as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. The Honorable Martha Koome, Senior, Martha Karua, Senior Counsel and former Cabinet Secretary of the Republic of Kenya. We are glad to host you. Thank you so much. Vincent Odhiambo, Ashoka East Africa Director. Maureen Miruka, Kenya Director. Ladies and gentlemen, all guests present and those following us online, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Tangaza University College. We are glad to host you on the launch of the Ashoka research findings on change makers in Kenya. This research is making an important contribution towards a better understanding of the work and lives of change makers in our society. Tangaza University College is committed to the transformation of the society and endeavors to prepare graduates to engage intelligently and compassionately to social challenges. Ashoka is our partner in our Institute of Social Transformation in offering support to social enterprises across Africa and has inspired the establishment of several social enterprises in Kenya and Africa at large. Tangaza is keen to develop social entrepreneurs who in turn would transform lives. it is obvious that something new is happening in our society. A new mode of society's solution to society's problem. A different thinking. The application of business models in solving society's problems so as to enable transformation of lives. Ashoka and Taganza pursue the same mission towards the positive transformation of society. We seek to make everyone a change maker. And Taganza strives to train students and all we come across to be the agents of this social transformation. It is a pillar of our strategy that we are an agent of the global transformation change of our society. Traditionally, universities have been known to be centers of excellence in research and in academics. But, ladies and gentlemen, this research and dissemination of knowledge is not of much value unless it is taken to the people. And it is through our pillar of community engagement that we take the results of our research, the results of our academic dissemination to the people in transformation. We are happy to partner with like-minded people like Ashoka in this endeavor to change our society. This makes Tangaza, of course, start out in training students whose focus is not just to transfer knowledge and papers, but to give them competence, skills, and attitude towards solving most difficult problems that our people in Africa are facing. Our alumni are known to be making this kind of changes. We partner with Ashoka to build products that solves these kind of problems. Our Master's of Business Administration, which is an executive Master's Business Administration, is deliberately designed for that purpose. We produce not just graduates, we produce social entrepreneurs. And the products that come out of the 2 years of study is a solution to society's problem. It is for that reason we are proud that every year we host the annual African Conference of Social Entrepreneurship in partnership with Ashoka. The inspiration behind this conference is to share stories of entrepreneurship, share stories about the changes that people are making out there, share stories about experiences and come up with new solutions. And the purpose is a new way of learning, not just dissemination by reading books and articles. The research on the Changemakers map will give areas of further research on social entrepreneurship that the academic society in Tangaza can drive. There's an urgent need for social entrepreneurship research in Africa. There's a lot that we need to know about social entrepreneurship, my good friends. That is why we are pleased that Ashoka and Tangaza are working collaboratively to achieve this mission. We expect to continue this collaboration with Ashoka and other partners to build a better Kenya. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, a little to reflect on challenges of entrepreneurs, both social and otherwise. Yesterday, I was reflecting on the ease of doing business in Kenya. A research that normally carried out in many places in the world. There's a lot of improvement in the country. I think the last 5 years, we have improved from number 120 something to number 50 something. We are improving the ease of doing business. Ashoka and Tangaza are the kind of people who are playing some of the opportunities in making this change, providing capacity for social entrepreneurs, providing knowledge base for social entrepreneurs, providing networking opportunities, and all these improve the ease of doing business. We can do better. And that is why we would like to partner more with others, especially to improve the small areas that are remaining. One of those I reflect on, and I am sure that Honorable Mother Karua would be happy to look at this in her circles in some of the areas I know she's very passionate about, improving the lives of people, and especially through the judicial system. One of the challenges of doing business in our society today is the period of time it is taking to settle contractual obligations. Yesterday was checking, it took 465 days last year on average to settle contractual obligations. It took less than 100 days in Singapore. If we are to get to the level of people like Singapore, we must improve on that parameter. How long it is taking us to settle this obligation. And if you check out of those 465, 365 are days taken in the litigation and judgment, not even enforcement. If only we can improve in that. And that is not all. Also the cost of litigation. 40% of the value of the award is going to the litigation cost. For any entrepreneur, especially the small one, 40% is too much to handle. By the time you get the award, you have lost time and you have lost money. Yes, there are alternatives that have been created. For instance, alternative dispute resolution, mediation, and arbitration. But we can do a lot more, and especially to encourage our people to look for those alternatives, but also to make those alternatives work faster and more efficient. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for choosing Tangaza University College. We welcome you again. And before you leave, take a moment to learn a little more of the many things we are doing, including other programs like developing the young people, leadership and ethics, education, and theology. Welcome to Tangaza, where we teach minds, touch hearts, and transform lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wangombe. We appreciate that conversation. Allow me now to invite one of the partners towards this initiative, Dr. Maureen Miruka, who's the Country Director of Care Kenya. You're welcome, ma'am.
I'm one of the people that's just really not got used to wearing masks. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the invitation. And thank you for having me here. It's my absolute honor and pleasure as a country director for Kenya, a partner with Ashoka in this program, to welcome Justice Koome, Honorable Martha Karua, and other distinguished guests. Thank you, sir. I said it's my absolute honor and pleasure as a country director for Kenya to welcome Justice Martha Koome and Honorable Martha Karua and other distinguished guests to this event today for a program that we've been undertaking with Ashoka in Africa. In Kenya, sorry. I like to say that one of my favorite authors is Mitch Albom. He writes about very serious matters in life. And one of the things that he says in one of his books is that there are no coincidences and no story really sits on its own. And for me, Ashoka is one of those because 8 to 9 years ago, I was approached by a contact at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to nominate someone to Ashoka in the area of agriculture and climate change. And at that time, I looked around and I was really inspired by a young man who had gone ahead of our times to look at the challenges that youth face in agriculture and the goods and services that they need. And at that particular time, looking at markets, as we know, markets for smallholders and for farmers, are still far from being optimal. And so I nominated Joseph Macharia, and the rest is history. So a few days ago when Vincent and I were having a conversation, and I said, you know what, I actually nominated someone to Ashoka many years ago, and he said, really? We really recognize our nominators. And who did you nominate? I said, Joseph Macharia. And he said, oh, I was just speaking to Joseph Macharian is one of the people who's really gone ahead, with this program. And so here I am, 2 months old into my job. And the other thing that I have to do is again, sit through this launch and just celebrate the work that my colleagues at CARE and with Ashoka that we have done together in launching the Changemakers, who really are the ones that are going to move our society, our socioeconomics, our livelihoods to the next level. And so our role at CARE and our mandate at CARE is, of course, women and girls empowerment. We have moved to the other level of engaging men and boys because we want to carry both in this conversation. And I recognize that the work that we did with regards to this program is to ensure that we had gender balance and an understanding of the gender issues that affect change makers in this landscape. But I'm here again to say that we have so much more to do. Because at CARE, we recognize gender inequality as one of the root causes of poverty, right there, with governance and with, environmental and other disasters and shocks, such as climate change. And of course, right now we have COVID-19. And so we say that also within CARE, for us to address gender equality and women's empowerment or women's voice in totality, we need to look at 3 spheres. And the first, which I really like that I had my colleague here, the director for Tangaza, speak to, is the fact that we need to build the agency of all the change makers, of young women and men. And it's not just with the capacities and the skills and the knowledge that they need. We also need to build their confidence, their conviction, their aspirations, for themselves, and just their ability to step out there, because as we've heard, entrepreneurship is a very difficult, area to navigate. The second part of that we want to look at is changing the relations. These are the power relations, the dynamics, because all inequalities really are caused by underlying, power inequalities and relations. So when we change the relations right from household level, how men and women engage, and right to all of these spheres in the agriculture sector, again, we look at markets. How do market actors relate with women? How are they responsive to the needs of women? How do we see women, for instance, in the local markets playing better, but in the more advanced markets, we see, men over there. So we need to change those relations and become responsive, to the needs of entrepreneurs who are stepping into this space. And the last is we need to transform the structures, the institutional structures in all that we deal with, in all of the areas that we work with. This is because institutions are the environment within which the change makers navigate, navigate their paths. And by institutions, we mean both formal and traditional institutions, because traditional institutions is where we have all these social norms, all these discriminatory and exclusionary, social norms that determine this is what a male or female entrepreneur can do or cannot do, and this is the spaces they can be at. And the formal institutions, such as this, such as Ashoka. So I'm calling on all the leaders, all the role models, we don't have a shortage of them right here in this room, who can really step into that space and to that gap and work around how we can continue to empower and build the change makers in the next generations and come forward with them. And so with that in mind, again, I invite you, to this event to fully participate and think about the next conversation that we want to have when we are here, to talk about the change makers, now that we know where they are, what their networks are, and what they are doing. So thank you so much again for having me.
Very much. Round of applause for Dr. Maureen. Thank you very much. And so now we've had Ashoka from all the speakers who've stood here so far. And it's now time to hear from the man who has been stewarding this vision, the regional director of Ashoka East Africa, And as he comes here, you should know that this organization celebrated 20 years this year, just recently. So that's a cause for celebration. 20 years of impact and significance in the areas of social enterprise. So we welcome you, Mr. Vincent Odhiambo.
Thank you, Catherine. I hope this is audible. The Honorable Martha Karua and nominated Chief Justice on her way. It's really a pleasure for that you are here. We really thank you. I appreciate the VC designate at Tangaza University. I thank you also. Thank you for hosting us and for the encouraging words that you just gave before. To my counterpart from Care Kenya, Dr. Maureen, it is really such a pleasure that you just stepped in 2 months into the role and have really taken up onto the project with so much energy. I really appreciate and what Care is doing. To our panelists, I can see Charles Kimathi here, Standard Media Group, Corporate Affairs, and of course, Mr. Kiragu, who's a policy expert. You can tell we are really looking forward to hearing from you guys. What we have done is basically identify where change makers are and identify where they are challenged and also the opportunities. But we want to hear more from you on what is the best way forward. But as we even anticipate that, let me start by saying on behalf of Ashoka teams, because this has been a teams of teams effort, there are those who are joining us from other parts of the world, from Europe, the Ashoka Austria team, together with the Care Austria. I want to say thank you for all of you who are joining virtually and those who are here in person. And also want to, on behalf of the Ashoka Africa team across Africa, from Sahel, from South Africa, from Anglophone Nigeria, we really say thank you all for making it to this event. It is not going to be the day to talk so much about Ashoka, not even about Care, not even about the project, because the project has now done what it was meant to do up to this point. But of course, we want to also recognize the support that made this possible, the mapping process possible. And that is through the Austria Development Corporation. We really appreciate that. And also the PwC, the work that they have done in making this also a reality. I think we'll be hearing more about their contribution at some point when the map will be presented. So there is something that is being said a lot. And every time I think about it, I'm now beginning to think there's no need of stating it anymore. That change is happening, that there's a lot of accelerated change across. And this change is bringing with itself opportunities and also challenges. And what we have learned as Ashoka, and also I'm happy that recently I saw there's a video that was being around where the president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, talking about change makers. And the way he went about describing change makers is the same way we have over time described change makers. For the last 40 years, for those of you who don't know much about Ashoka, we've been selecting, finding leading social entrepreneurs or leading change makers, senior change makers, and supporting them to scale their innovations. So when the president was talking about change makers and saying, these are people who spot challenges, and these are people who see opportunities, and they plug into these opportunities in ways that what they are doing is for the common good of all. Whatever solutions that they're thinking about is for the common good of all. If it is a challenge, they don't give up on the challenge. They don't give up because this is a challenge. They put in extra hours, they put in extra effort to find solution for this challenge. So for us, it's really a joy to see that through this program, through the Changemaker mapping, we were able to go far and beyond where we've always been used to hearing about change making, and that is within the big cities. We were able to go outside Nairobi to identify who are some of these change makers in those areas, in the areas outside Nairobi, and what are the challenges that they are experiencing, and what are the opportunities that they are also seeing. And so the map you will see will give you an insight on the very particular challenges that the change makers are struggling with, and also very particular opportunities that they want to pursue. But it is not just going to be pursuing of these opportunities and trying to work out on these challenges at individual level. At Ashoka, the one thing that we've also learned, and this is very critical, this is absolutely important, and it is something that is represented by the partnership that we are talking about today, the partnership that has made this successful, that has made this possible. It is collaboration. So one thing that we have learned is that to really accelerate the growth of innovations, to really help change makers and social entrepreneurs to scale their innovation, there's need for collaboration. And it is not your typical collaboration where you're only thinking, I am in this sector, so I just need to find someone within the same sector as me. We are thinking about, and we are talking about cross-sector collaboration. You will notice that Ashoka is totally different from, say CARE. CARE is an international NGO. Ashoka, we are into social entrepreneurship. Within that partnership also there is Austria Development Corporation, and then also there is PwC, from private sector. So there is a representation of different players, players who are coming from a different perspective. And so as Ashoka, that is one thing that we are putting a lot of emphasis on. And as we look at this map, as we dig deep into the opportunities and the challenges these change makers are talking about, what we want to do as a partnership is to strongly advocate for collaboration. And we are talking about cross-sectoral collaboration. This panel, the first panel, and even the second panel, you will see this a lot. We have individual leaders. Business as usual. The same thing is happening, and it's transforming and if you cannot keep up with that change, it is time for us to have more research-based innovation and academia, because that is one of the important really counts on building bridges with the academia and all the I know these are not the two people, right? No one again what to do. So I want to stop here and to welcome you all to this event today. Also, joining us virtually and also here in person. This is going to be change. So this taking change inside. So we promise from the way we design the program that this is going to get engaged. We hope that you will enjoy the 5 hours that we are going to do with you. We hope that you will learn. We hope that you will also learn from you. We hope that you will make new information. And we hope that at the end of this all, individually and also collectively, we will live here with a stronger sense of mission, stronger purpose, and a drive to advance everyone at the time. We also will not practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odhiambo, for that presentation. You actually went with my program. Thank you. So what I've always said is, when you have the opportunity or the chance to be in the same room with people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet as an individual, you take as much advantage as you possibly can and ask questions so that you get to learn and know how to move with the things that you need to move on in your life. And what this event offers everybody, both physically and also online, is a chance to just grab this opportunity and gain insight and knowledge. It's basically free mentorship. That's what's being offered here today. And so take advantage of it. And even for our online audience, first of all, put in the chat box where you're tuned in from, and also start to put your questions together if you have them, and we'll be able to sample some of them as much as time allows us to. So for now, we want to know a lot more about this map, and here to share the findings, analysis, and visual tour of the Changemakers map, I want to bring on the lead Kenya Changemaker mapping for Ashoka East Africa. That's Arnold Otieno, and online we'll be having Miss Sarah, who tunes in from Austria. You're most welcome, Sarah. And Arnold, it's your turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled to be here before you this morning to share with you about the mapping results. A lot has been talked about, and we talk about change and change makers. So who is a change maker? So a change maker is someone with a new idea that is supposed to bring to reality and works collaboratively with others to bring this reality for the good of all. Allow me at this point in time to take you through not only the results, but the process through which we took to have the Changemaker Map project Kenya implemented. So why the Changemaker mapping? The aim of this project is basically to support the development of social entrepreneurship ecosystem within the local partners. And we did this by identifying the change makers in Kenya in the selected themes. We identified the challenges and the opportunities as well as the themes. And we sought to strengthen the community change makers in the country, Kenya. We employed the methodology of exploratory study, adopted a combination of qualitative and quantitative analysis for the findings, and involved the snowball sampling and data collection analysis. With that, I'm happy to take us through the processes through which we implemented this project. We started by recruiting and onboarding the enumerators. Thereafter followed a kickoff workshop, supported the study design. At fourth, we took to train the Ashoka East Africa mapping team and identified the initial 20 people. I did mention that we explored the snowball effect through this project, meaning that we had to first get the initial 20 people who would in turn nominate the change makers in the region. To this end, we have done the data quality audits, and the analysis of the report is here with us today, something we are happy to share with you. The presentation of the study results is today, and we are still in the process of doing the final report, which is on progress. The study findings cuts across 8 key issues. The first one being the regional focus in the network, how the key players identified and were selected. We also found out about the academia and the public institutions that bridge the builders, high awareness of impact, some challenges, impact women and men, experienced differently, opportunities to correspond with the challenges experienced, innovators and experts driven in the network, and broadening the roles based that strengthen the network itself. The insights at a very primary stage include the early stage communities with large numbers already active, changemakers providing open space, and a strong base for engagement activities. We also see the community building, focus strengthening, and connections between changemakers active in some of the areas, fostering national area-specific network based on area of expertise. The focus on building triangular relationships by bringing together changemakers from the same region and from the same sector. The insights are more like what I've just shared. So because of time, I will take us to the next part of the presentation, which is going to be on the findings. But before that, allow me to speak to my personal reflection on this. During this time, we had reached out to so many change makers in the country. And from this, I learned about so many societal problems and how the young men and women of this country are trying to solve these societal problems. We kicked off this study when we were just closing down as a country, and that was sometime in March last year. And from this, the enumerators didn't have the best of the time in trying to conduct these studies, in that it was not very easy to reach out to the people who we wanted to reach out to. So with this, I learned a lot of resilience. And from that, I have become much more resilient than I have ever been. To that end, allow me to move to the next, which is the presentation of the day. And now I want to introduce you to the landscape of the Kenya Changemaker mapping. The goal of this project is to create a visual map with people who as changemakers make positive contribution to the development and implementation of solutions in the field of education, climate change and agriculture, health, education, and disability. Once we do this, we hope that we are going to make these people more visible, encourage cooperation, and understand how they could better be supported. The questions that we asked for this study include challenges in the work that the changemakers are doing, the opportunities in their areas, and we also focused on the gender issues. So we looked at about 7 areas, the first one being climate change and agriculture, health, youth, women and girl empowerment, education, disability, and we had other due to the snowball effect. So a few statistics to what we have. We reached out to about 672 change makers. We interviewed fully 468, and in the network, we have 619 organizations. The response rate to this end, we have it at 83%. Something to note is that women took 53.7% in this. And what we can say is that while respondents are highly engaged and interested in topics, they are not yet having a broad network of change makers. So that is an overall finding that we have here, that we have a lot of change makers, but they are not yet connected. Allow me to take you to the regions that we focused on. we majorly dwelt on the towns around the formerly 8 provinces of Kenya so that we could have the snowball effect replicating all the way. So we had Nairobi, we have Kakamega, we have Coast, Rift Valley, we have Central, Eastern, and Northeastern. And from this, we can clearly see that there's a strong urban divide visible within Nairobi as a county, and being the home base of a third of the nominated change makers. And I think if you look at it keenly from the projections there, we have Central and Eastern coming somewhere down, and this could be explained by the proximity to Nairobi from these regions. I'm happy to take you through the Changemaker map network at this point in time, where we are going to look at what we have as the map. So that is the map itself of the change makers that we have in the country. Something very important to mention is that there are a large number of change makers, and the nominated change makers indicate an active and highly motivated field. We are also seeing from certain corners where we can see some triangular relationships. And here we can tell that the change makers are embedded into triangular relationships. And by nominating 2 change makers who also nominated each other, that indicates a weaker relationship between the change makers. At a later time, we are going to share with you a link through which we are going to see in a different presentation where we can navigate and see how these relationships have been formed. Kindly allow me to also share about the key players in the Changemaker network. The key players here we have are selected based on status and reputation in the field, the number of nominations, standards, and ranks, and their betweenness factor in the network. That is the measurement on how closely they are connected to their peers, standardized, and ranked. We see from the findings that there is a balance in gender split for the key players with 10 men and 10 women in the ranks of the first 1 to 20 and 20 to 21 of the change makers. To this end, I would want to take us through the Changemaker organizations. And in this, we identify with the academia and public institutions as our bridge builders. The distribution of organizations types consistent in all areas. Each are consistent in similar and mixed organization types. The distribution of organization types does not vary significantly in different areas. We also notice that non-Changemaker specific organizations, missing effect, and powerful networks rely on organizations who have status and reputation internally and in the Changemaker community network, and organizations with status and reputation outside the Changemaker community. The university research institutions and public institutions, these organizations should be strategically addressing some of the common findings that we've had to integrate them into the Changemaker community with a high status and establishment network outside the Changemaker community. They can be powerful partners. We had a very key focus on the gender. So at this point in time, I am going to take us through the focus on the gender. And here we see high gender awareness of gender impact. We can tell here that in the activities, we asked if these change makers are addressing gender-related issues, such as gender inequality, gender roles, relationships, and gender discrimination. So here was a yes, no, and some text. And from here, we noticed that for the yes, we have 79.2%, and for the no, we have about 14.8%. about 6.7. There are others who mentioned that to some extent they address these issues. The network focusing on the gender is shown, and it depicts as a bridging topic. This opens up a possibility to use gender as a bridging topic, as a high consensus base of those networks to lie in related communities, communications, and community building activities. Gender issues for the whole network, there's awareness of gender impact and focus on inclusion of gender issues into the network, into the work as a high priority throughout the network. We identified some challenges and opportunities that these change makers experience. So of the challenges, we are having financing coming top, and we have the knowledge and research further down. So for financing, there is a high need for additional financial resources corresponds with the extreme low number of funders in the network. Organizations with the ability to fund initiatives are not yet perceived to be part of the Changemaker community and do not themselves yet share the narratives and identity. So our finding give it that financing is one of the most challenges that the change makers in the country are facing. Some challenges impact women and men differently. And at this point, we can see that the gender inequalities affect women and men differently. So for women, experience challenges regarding gender inequality, gender discrimination, which men rarely report as a challenge. On the other end, men tend to report on significant and significantly more often than they are expressing themselves on the gender-related issues. They see political and legal framework as the key challenge that they are facing in whatever they are doing. To that end, we are also seeing some of the opportunities that the change makers identified and the studies give us to be the most commonly faced by them. The network is most important to express this, and we can see a reflection of the current status of the change makers in the network in the early stages of community building, but not yet established in different network structure. And that gives us an entry for Ashoka East Africa and the entire partnership on how to move this forward. Which opportunities are the change makers seeing? So the opportunities that the change makers are seeing here from the study findings, we find that the network has a most important opportunity. So this reflects to the current status of the Changemaker network in the early stages of community building, but not yet established in different network structures. An entry point, again, for Ashoka and the partners, as well as the guests that we have here today. Sources of innovation and expertise. We realize that from this study, we identify innovators to be the ones taking the higher percentage, followed by the experts. So the innovators are at 64%, leaving the innovators at 30%, followed by the academic or research, policy shaper, and the funders. To look at this further, we looked at some areas that are shaped by innovators and experts. And here we notice and we share with you our findings that experts are most strongly represented in disability, health, and other areas, whereas there are more innovators actively in engaging in women and girl empowerment and youth. Initially, we didn't have that, but we added it because throughout the study, we noticed that there were a lot of initiatives around women and girl empowerment, as well as youth. To look at a broader role-based strengthens the net, that strengthens the network, sorry. Innovators and experts drive network, and we find that they are at 64, just like I had shared in the previous slide. The change makers are identified as innovators in the network. 30% are experts with very small shares of academic and research of policy shapers and funders. This underscores the structure of an early stage network with low degree of role differentiations. Most change makers are seen as innovators and experts. Much of the network consists of organization types that are often smaller or less established, such as community-based organizations, NGOs, private companies, or social enterprises, with larger structures such as universities and public institutions or foundations are less represented. This indicates a lowness in the relevant institutions for the ideas and needs for the changemaker communities, that they are not yet part of the shared narrative. I would like to now take us through a visual tour of the study. And at this point in time, those who are online, you'll find in the chat a link that is going to help us see how the network looks like. So yes, so if we look at the link, it's now posted on the chat. It's a web-based tool that we are going to use for this. So I will just quickly share with you on how to navigate. You can actually just go through it at a personal level. We have to the extreme right at the top, we can have a place to add the data. Then if you want to do any search, next to add data point on the left, there's a search. So for instance, if you want to search for Nairobi, you want to search for change makers in Nairobi, you will just type in Nairobi and you will get. On the general filters, on the general filters, you can see, yes, where we have the save node, we have the position, we have the animated graphs. So whatever area that you're looking at from the cluster, let's say you want to look at, let's say gender, you can just click on the bottom, on the arrow showing down. So once you click on that, you will put, for instance, area, gender, or role. Once you do that, you can click on, you can check the box on the animated graph, and then you enter. So at that point in time, you will be able to see those change makers that are present in whichever country, or you can see the gender. So it's an open tool that you can just look across. If you scroll further down, you will see the legend areas. So from the legend areas, you can play around with this tool and get any other thing that you want to get. So this is with us in the link. And to this end, I am happy to end the presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me. Yes, so my colleague Sarah is online, and because of time, we thought that we could put our questions on the chat, and from there, we can be able to respond to some of the questions that are coming in. And my colleague Sarah online, this is your time. You could just say hi as we take on the questions.
Hi, thank you, Arnold. I'm Sarah. I'm from FS Research. We are Vienna-based social network analysis organization. And I was really happy to be able to guide Arnold and his team through this process and provide the analysis and the Changemaker mapping afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arnold and Sarah. Round of applause for them. Okay, so the program is basically officially on after that comprehensive presentation from the lead Kenya Changemaker mapping, Ashoka East Africa. Now it gives me great pleasure to invite a woman who's not a stranger to us, at least here in Kenya, and of course, Africa. She has been a trailblazer in the areas of leadership and governance in this country, and you have trodden paths, especially for women, making myself, the women in this room and the women online, basically women in this region believe in themselves that they can conquer paths and achieve anything they set their minds to do. Your work in leadership and governance is undisputable, and today we are so honored to have you, Senior Counsel, Honorable Martha Karua, come to give us the opening keynote. You're most welcome, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's my honor and pleasure to be part of this meeting. And I thank those who have spoken before me. I'm wondering what other keynote I'm required to give, because it's like everything has been said. I was just wondering, who is a change maker? And I thought in my dictionary, it is anyone who questions and seeks to improve. A change maker is a restless person who sees problems and wants to look for solutions to them. People who seek to improve the world around them for the better. Someone who sees challenges as opportunities. A solution provider. It is someone who dreams of what can be and sets out to make it happen, and constantly pushes for a better community, a better country, and a better world. A change maker is a leader capable of inspiring others, recruiting others to the cause, because nobody can make change on their own. You have to be with others. And as it has been said already, anyone can be a change maker. I think it's a choice we make, because you can choose your comfort zone or choose to push yourself harder to do better, and not just for yourself, for the community around you. And I was just reflecting on our African society. And I think as I grew up, we are taught the value of community, because to be a change maker, you have to value community, seeing everybody as a part of the whole, and seeing society as the larger family, and therefore wanting to reach out to do something good for your family, which is the the country, the world, and especially to uplift the vulnerable. So we have been brought in that environment, especially those who were brought up much earlier, because these days our world is becoming more and more individualistic. And do we really need change? And of course we do. It's a part of life. Even if you don't want change, it will happen. And therefore we need change, and we have to plan to make it happen and to manage it ourselves. And among the many places I occupy is the political space. And in the political space, every leader, when wooing voters, we tell them that we're going to transform. Things are going to change. Whether we mean it and whether we have really planned for any change other than the change of the person holding the position to yourself is debatable. And the only way leaders can be held to account, can be pushed to fulfill their promises, is if the society around them has grown to demand accountability and to push the accountability back. I'm looking at our continent, endowed with abundance of resources. I'm looking at our sub-region, East Africa, equally endowed. Looking at Kenya, equally endowed. We have plenty of resources, both human and other. But we have a serious deficit of leadership, a serious deficit of change makers who can transform all those resources we have to improve our societies, to become solutions to the many challenges that everybody, and especially the vulnerable, are facing today. So as you launch the Change Makers Map, you are coming to fill a gap that really is needed, that is so critical, because change makers are in all spaces and they can help to propel our country, the sub-region, and the African continent to be the leaders in the world. We have everything except the deficit of leadership that we are talking about, the deficit of change makers. And this is where we can step in. And when I was asked to be part of today, I wondered about myself. And I said, part of what I'll tell you today is the spaces I have occupied, or I think I have occupied as a change maker. And nobody goes out and thinks, oh, I'm going to be a change maker, this is what I'll do. In an organization, you plan, but life just happens and you look back and you see what you have been and what you have tried to do. And for me, I think the moment of waking up was when I stepped from public service. I had a short stint of 6 years as a magistrate into private practice and plunged into the politics of the law society. And the bone of contention then was feeling as young lawyers that our leadership is moving into bed with government and therefore unable to hold the government to account on issues of human rights and the rule of law. And I had this reawakening in me that you cannot practice your profession in a vacuum. It is within the socio, economic, and political context of the world you live in. So we started realizing very quickly that the politics of the day affects the environment that I practice in, the environment I live in, and the environment I was raising my very young children who were below 4. So you connect all these things and you realize that you have a duty to contribute to positive change. And it started with just pushing the accountability bar in the law society, recruiting others to sign up the demands for better leadership, recruiting others to hold meetings as provided in the Law Society Act, which is the charter that guides the Law Society, to censor the leadership. And that spilled over to national politics because, like I said, you don't practice in a vacuum. We connected that whatever the government was doing is what was shrinking the democratic space and encouraging violation of our rights to express ourselves, to assemble, and of human rights generally. And we pursued those issues with such passion, with such single-mindedness, that we started to experience a bit of successes here and there, although the challenges were many, but the challenges did not worry us. We worked around them. And if we didn't overcome them, at least we were able to continue operating. And the long and short of it is that from law society activism to actually entering into the leadership of the law society as a council member, when the country opened for multipartyism in 1992, I actually had not thought ahead. I had not thought I was going to go into politics, but I had already become sensitized as a women's rights activist. From human rights, I realized that even in human rights, women are treated differently and are hit harder. So I became conscious of my gender as a barrier to the things that I want to do. And I remember visiting Uganda, invited by FIDA Uganda. We went to represent FIDA Kenya, finding the women in Uganda organized. Museveni had just come into power, it's the 90s, in 1990 actually, and women were being accorded space not only in government, but even the FIDA conference. The government was facilitating FIDA to even pick up their guests from the airport and all that. So we found an organized place and place where women's rights were recognized. And that rubbed off us. We came and transformed FIDA Kenya. We came fired as activists. So what Ashoka is doing, bringing change makers together, you actually encourage and energize each other. And you energize each other not just in East Africa, but within your larger network. And we come together so that we learn from one another. One of the things I have learned is that in everything you want to do, the greatest opposition is within you. Because if you're not fully convinced, if you're harboring doubts, can I do this? Will I succeed? Those are seeds of doubt. And you will not be fully committed. You are not fully committed. What you communicate to the people around you is that 50-50. If you're fully committed, your passion, your drive will be different. And you will be oozing confidence. And that confidence will transmit itself to those around you. And you will be able to advocate for the cause. It is not in all things that one is able to be 100% committed. Sometimes you don't even know, but you find yourself asking inwardly the proprietorness of what you're doing. And that divided attention will undermine your success. So for the courses that you select because you have planned, your roadmap is a planning tool. Once you give it a full commitment, you definitely will succeed. And I was talking of politics and saying that what we need is a deficit. What we lack is leadership. We have a deficit of leadership. Can you imagine a government that even has just one half change makers, what it would look like? Kibaki's government had change makers, not 100%. But that energy translated itself into the monumental changes that happened in this country. The very same people, or at least quite a number of them, were in a second government. The results were not the same. The results were positive, both positive and negative. Because also there was that acceptance of our turn to eat. Not in so many words, but the moment you hear people push that the dockets you're giving us are not lucrative enough, what are you saying? Because it's an opportunity to serve. And I'm not blaming any one side because it was a song embraced all around. So you've moved so far and you are now reversing because the philosophy has changed. Even if there will be one moving in a different direction, the general energy is towards the wrong direction. So I'm imagining that with organizations like Ashoka, looking for change makers and nurturing change makers and sharing the energy to keep people focused and not to drop the ball, we will be able to transform the world around us and eventually the entire world. Because it begins with a small number of people or with a person recruiting others, and on it goes. So we want to transform. We have to be that change, and each standing in the spaces we occupy. When I entered government, because in politics, I was in the back bench for 10 years. The first 5 years, towards the end of it, I was actually giving up. I remember telling my father that I'm not going to defend my seat in 1997, early 97. And he was like, what? After they bothered you like this, you're going to give them your seat on a silver platter? So he was trying to convince me to run just once more, even if just for him. But I didn't have to do that because before the end of 97, in Parliament, we came together and we formed the Inter-Parties Parliamentary Group because my frustration was that I had nothing to show in terms of positive legislation, because you go to Parliament to inform policy, legislation, and to be a watchdog. We had tried to be a watchdog and highlighted the failings of government. We had not been able to advance legislation because the overwhelming numbers were Kano. We had not been able to influence policy. I was feeling the frustration. But when we came together as IPPG, Inter-Parties Parliamentary Group, instituted constitutional changes, the very tail end of 97, I actually felt that now I could justify my continuation. We were able to considerably level the playing field by amending the constitution and amending laws to do with sedition and stopping that were preventing us from being able to assemble. We also were able to start the baby steps of the formal constitutional review because a bill was tabled, though not discussed in 1997, to guide constitutional review. We were able to carry on that now in 98. So it is possible to get discouraged, even as a change maker, when you feel you are hitting the wall. But it is also possible to think harder and get out of that situation. Like that instance where we were able to come together as parliamentarians, influence Parliament and the outside to accept our agenda. And those minimum reforms are what enabled, not everybody was happy with them, but they actually enabled the opposition to eventually dislodge Kanu in 2002, because now we could campaign in the whole country. Other changes came that were significant, like counting at the polling stations. But look at now, the very changes are not working for today's election. Should we give up or think outside the box on how to have credible elections. Look at our agriculture, and agriculture is one of the things you've taken up here. We have arable land. Our climate is not that bad. We can't just feed ourselves. And even when we have excess food in one corner, the other corner will be starving. We have floods, and then we have serious drought in the same areas. We are not managing our resources. Where are the change makers that can cause an agricultural revolution in this country, that can cause a revolution in the way we manage our water resources? I keep citing Israel and Egypt because Egypt has only 4% of its landmass as arable land, and that is on the banks of the Nile. Israel can go for years without rain. Both countries are exporting fruits and other foods to Kenya. Just to show you the opportunities that we sit in, the resources we sit on, and then we suffer. So in a nutshell, I'm just trying to say that Ashoka is on the right track, not only to marshal change makers, but to recruit and energize change makers who then can transform our countries, whether it is in different fields, and also to ensure that you talking of resources, we never think hard about human resources. We are very upset when our leaders abuse our financial resources. We never think of the human resource. Human resource is also a great resource because without it, nothing else can move. How do we apply our human resource? Are we matching talents with the task? Are we exploiting our full potential when we leave women behind? We are leaving 50%, slightly over 50% of our human resource. So gender equality then becomes very central to a change makers agenda. And I am very happy that it is included in, you see it as a cross-cutting issue in all the things that you're doing. I just want to finish by saying that having a roadmap is key, because if you don't plan, then you plan to fail. That you can't be a change maker and not expect challenges. Life is full of challenges, but God has endowed us with minds that can be used creatively to overcome whatever challenges we face. And what you can't dream of collectively, we can dream of together. That we have to keep our eyes on the ball. I just gave you an example of the first Kibaki government and the second. Somewhere we dropped the ball. And I dropped off. When I felt that we were completely off course, we dropped the ball and I dropped off. Not running away from the problems, but occupying a different space in the back benches and playing my role. And I was glad that I continued to play my watchdog role. And I also played my role in making the constitution, because I remained a key member of the committee handling that. So keeping the focus is very important. And commitment for the long haul, because everything will not just come in a minute. It is a struggle. You keep on getting incremental gains. And if we have no patience, then we may never transform in the ways that we want to. And it's an endless job. No sooner you finish one goal, you see 1,000 other things that need to be done. We were crying for multi-party, and it came. It came with its own challenges. We fought for a new constitution, it came with its own challenges. We now have serious challenges of implementation, of nurturing constitutionalism and the rule of law. We need, and one thing I've also learned from this, from the presentation here, is that we can partner even with those we do not see as change makers, because their networks may have powerful contacts for the agenda that we have. So the ability to work with diverse people, diverse organizations is very key. And also leveraging on networks, power of networks. We were discussing with Vincent that even how you reach people when you want people for a gathering like this. Those you don't know, you will look for someone who knows them. So it's always about networks. And I can see Ashoka is on track in leveraging on the power of networks. I can't say everything. And being a person who under living through speaking, because representation is speaking. We can be here until tomorrow and I won't have finished. So allow me to end there and wish you well, congratulate you on your mission, and say we can do more for the world, because I too identify myself by choice as a change maker. And I am here to learn and to also create more networks so that tomorrow I can leverage on the power of networks. I thank you.
A round of applause for Honorable Martha Karua, please. Now that's what I'm talking about, inspiration. I remember when you resigned back then, it was the most surprising and shocking thing that we witnessed in this country, because ministers just don't resign. It doesn't matter who's screaming for them to do that, but you resigned on account of integrity. And to this day, that remains one of those things that we will tell our children and our children's children that if it doesn't match your values, take a walk and find other places you can fight from. So thank you so much for gracing our occasion today. And I want to invite Shoka Youth Changemaker and founder, Sekani Tech Limited, Eli Savatia. You're most welcome, young man making waves. A round of applause for him, please.
Many thanks for the great opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure to connect with you. Good morning, Changemakers. My name is Eli Savatia. I am a 20-year-old inventor. I'm a tech optimist and a social entrepreneur. My change-making journey started around 10, 11 years old. And I can vividly remember breaking apart electronics in our house. And sometimes it would get me in trouble with my parents. And it became a habit. And with time, I grew this passion and interest in technology. When I turned 13, that's when I learned about the word innovation. And I continuously chose to pursue technology-driven change making. Fast forward, when I was in high school, I interacted with different students from different communities, that diversity. And by that time, I was really passionate about the Sustainable Development Goals. And I mobilized young people in my school, and also when I graduated high school, the same. And the goal was to put young people under the one mission, which is the SDGs, and have them realize the paramount role that they play when it comes to realizing the 2030 agenda. Fast forward again, 2020 came, and I can remember while conducting some of these sessions, robotics and SDGs training, we interacted with deaf students around Kenya. And the only mode of communication that we had was pen and paper. So this was like an aha moment for me and my team. So lockdown came, and I was like, I am passionate about this. I think I need to do something about this. So what we did, we connected with sign language translators and interpreters. We also sent out interviews and forms to the deaf community. So like our goal was to see how can we bridge this information gap? How can we help them access the world? So through the lockdown, we've been building a solution, a technological solution to help bridge the accessibility gap for the deaf community. Today, I stand before you as a proud co-founder and CEO of Sekani Tech. And thank you. We have built an assistive technology solution. So basically answering the question, like imagine yourself as a manager or as an interviewer, and you have to interview a deaf applicant. So that's a barrier already. So what we have done, call it the next evolution of sign language translation using artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can call it the Siri of sign language interpretation. So far, we are working with 20 deaf individuals, actively testing and iterating our machine learning model. And we are currently translating the Kenyan Sign Language dialect entirely at the comfort of your device. So as simply as just pointing your camera to a deaf individual who is signing, and our application does the magic for you. So just like me, there are many other young people out there who are actively pursuing change making. They are breaking barriers. They are solving some of the world's most pressing problems. I am confident and I believe that the capacity of my generation to actively accelerate change and improve communities with the solutions that we are building. But we want to ask the media to highlight the change-making activities, to highlight the work that young change makers are doing, not just rather than troublemakers. I would like to hear from the panelists about their thoughts and how they imagine these new frameworks of change making, and possibly point us to how we can how we can access such kind of space. And we also want to urge the policymakers to help implement policies that can ensure an ecosystem and an environment where young people can thrive in change-making activities. So please allow me to welcome Cynthia Mwangi. She will moderate the panel session. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So now we are on to our conversation with the panelists, and I'd like to introduce each one of them, starting from the right. It's the right, yes. We have with us Mr. Kirago Ashira, who's the Director of Sustainable Institutions Consulting Limited. You're most welcome. And we have Senior Counsel, Honorable Martha Karua, who's just given us an inspiring keynote speech a few minutes ago. You're most welcome, ma'am. We have Charles Kimathi, who's the Corporate Affairs and Partnerships Director at the Standard Group PLC. You're most welcome, sir. And we have Ms. Hannah Ahere, who's a Special Assistant to the Regional Director, Ford Foundation Office, Eastern Africa. Karibuni sana. So I want to start with you, Mr. Kirago Ashira, and just for our online audience, again, remember, ask questions, feel free, we'll sample some of them as much as time can allow us. Just drop that on the chat box. So for you, Mr. Ashira, my question would be, what role does public policy and legislation play in shaping narratives that favor social entrepreneurship?
Thank you so much. One thing I would like to highlight first, and just listening to Alice, is that when entrepreneurs or innovators come up with ideas, they are thinking within their own circles, they are troubled by something, and they want to solve a problem. Sometimes obvious, which is not part of their responsibility, is to think through the wider ecosystem and what could be root causes of some of the problems they're dealing with. Their first focus is how can I use my technology, for example, how can I use my social skills to solve a problem? So now it comes a time where you have to think through how do I interface this solution with the society and with the wider society. That's when now public policy comes in, where it's engaging government, engaging the public bodies, engaging this wider community to think through how do you solve these problems and how do you integrate the private interventions within a public space. So public policy comes into, for example, validate the idea. So for example, the solution that they're coming with about artificial intelligence and solving communication for deaf people, policy now will come in, for example, to validate that technology, to validate the investment, to validate the entrepreneurs, to create the market for the product, to create space for them to operate, to remove some regulatory bottlenecks, for example, that would hinder them from advancing and upscaling their projects and ideas. It also shapes the narrative in terms of the conversations. So if, for example, the president, the ministers at the county level, policy leaders, they converse and talk about that kind of idea, it helps society to understand that this is actually something that is valid. When you have such kind of a technology and you have political leaders, for example, or policy leaders fighting it, then it limits its ability to be accepted by the public. And one of the challenges that social entrepreneurs face is community acceptance, that your products are actually legitimate products that meet the market value and market solutions, and they can purchase those products or services. So you require public policy to validate that, so the community accepts those products and they can actually use them. Thank you.
How do change makers then access people like you who validate those ideas that they have?
So what I do for myself, I'm a lawyer. I work in the public policy space, advising government and industry in adopting policies that shape society. So one of the things that you realize is that it's about networks, being within networks. So one of the networks I've worked with in the industry, for example, is Kenya Association of Manufacturers and Kenya Private Sector Alliance. So those are spaces where, as an entrepreneur, you need to get into because they have access to government. And that's what the other speakers have alluded to. They have access to government. They have a platform that is even structured. So as an entrepreneur, I would want to be in those networks so that then if I don't have direct access to government, they have a space already and I can articulate my issues to those networks. And two is networks of people within that sector. So if it's the technology advancement, how can I, for example, network with lawyers who are experts in technology field? How can I network with government agencies that are providing regulatory frameworks within that particular sector? I think that's what I'd like to look at, mostly the network, getting out there, but also appreciating that you start small.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would like to reach to Honorable Martha Karua, but I don't have access to her. But as she said, I can get like 3 other people who can help me to access to her.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have a dream that I want to access to her today. So sometimes it's not possible. It's not possible to meet the president today or the cabinet secretary for technology, information, and all that. So just accepting, let me start within my network, start small, then later I can be able to access the leading policymakers and have change there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. So there's always someone you know who knows someone that you want to meet, as Honorable Martha Karua said. Charles Kimathi from the Standard Group, you had the Farm Kenya initiative that was launched 3 years ago at the Standard Group. And could you perhaps speak to it?
Yes. The Farm Kenya initiative is an innovative program that the Standard Group decided to launch, primarily because we realized that the media has to go beyond just reporting what was happening around us and actually getting into the mud, so to speak, and actually do it. We decided, because we got involved with the Ashoka a while back, and sat and decided, no, you know, we must be change makers as well. We know our role in society, but how do we engage practically and on a daily basis? So we launched this in towards the end of 2018. It's practically a platform where we hope and expect really that all the stakeholders in the agricultural sector in Kenya and in the region will find a place where they interact and actually together solve the problems that face us every day. I'm glad that Honorable Mother Karua talked about agriculture and challenged us. I mean, with all the resources that we have, with all the human talent, with all the endowment, physical endowment we have, why is it that we can't feed ourselves? And those are precisely the questions we asked ourselves and said, look, there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work, but there's a missing link. They cannot get through to create a network. Why? Because media is not particularly cheap. I mean, it's not cheap. So we thought the best thing we would do is become a partner in this process and get in there and welcome anyone who has solutions to come onto our platform. Now, just very quickly, what that does is that we are using all our media channels, both in print, television, radio, digital, and also on ground activities to bring about this change. So it is an integrated platform that allows everyone to come on board and begin to share and solve all manner of problems together. Thank you.
What are the success stories that you can share just quickly?
Yes, one of the key things that we realized, for even those in agriculture right now, is inability to access markets because of middlemen. A very simple example. So what we did is that we partnered, because it's all based on collaborations, with people, the innovators, who have come up with solutions through technology, digital-based technologies, various apps, and create a virtual market. So right now you'll find, if you go to the Play Store, you'll find something we are calling Vuna, the Vuna app, VWNA, where producers can actually sell their produce as wholesalers into a market within Nairobi. Something else we did was to create linkages with young people who are innovating. And we try to integrate this and publicize them. And out of that, link them up with people who may wish to invest and upscale those innovations. So right there, you find that we are actually bringing on board very practical solutions to problems that a lot of us have been facing and wondering who would be courageous enough to come in and do this. Yes.
Well, thank you for that, Charles. Hannah Ahere, reading about you and your work on philanthropy and the role it plays in addressing community development in a sustainable manner here in Kenya. Could you speak a bit more to that?
So maybe I can start by just simply defining what philanthropy is. So philanthropy is simply private giving for public good. So it can be individual giving, an institution giving, but for something that will be good for the community. Philanthropy is not a new word or a new phenomenon in Africa. It's existed even pre-colonial days. And I think that if any of you think about your community and your village where you live, you have one time or the other given some money for a certain cause. So that is philanthropy. For many years, it has always been said that philanthropy is foreign and that we wait for money from philanthropists from the north to be able to develop. But that's not true, because lately there are a lot of studies that are going on that are showing that there's a lot of giving, particularly in Kenya. Let me talk a little bit about what the Ford Foundation as a philanthropy has done in community development in this country. The Ford Foundation is an American nonprofit private philanthropy institution that has existed for 8 years. One of the things that the foundation does is to fight inequality. The Ford Foundation has been in East Africa since 1962 and started its work by trying to build institutions and individuals who could be able to take over from the colonial government. So that has continued until now. At the moment, since 2015, the Ford Foundation has continued to work in this region and to work with civil society organizations, making grants that helps to alleviate poverty and to also help in human rights issues. One thing is clear that most of the problems that we have locally are actually global problems. So we're not trying to solve problems just looking at them regionally, but we're also looking at problems on how do they fit in the global agenda. So from time to time, we find that if you're talking about women's rights, if you're talking about violence against women, if you're talking about rights for people with disability, it is a global problem. So how do we trickle from the regional to the global so that we look at the problem as a whole?
Okay, your definition is quite enlightening. So private giving for public good, simple as that. Kind of like it. Okay, Honorable Martha Karua, you spoke about in your keynote the need for patience, and I gathered also persistence has a huge role to play in the areas of leadership and governance. And for the millennials or the Gen Z, that's, you know, the current generation you have now, the people who are born, I think, post 2000, and want to get into this space of politics and governance. Is there room for that? And if so, how do they make the inroads to be change makers in politics?
There is a lot of room, and space is never given. It is taken or grabbed, if you like. Nobody will give you room at the table. You've got to create room for yourself. I started politics as a youth. I was actually elected just shortly after my 35th birthday. So for a year, I was still a youth in parliament. And that time, they thought I was too young for parliament because it was full of octogenarians. Today, parliament is full of youthful people, yet parliament is getting worse and worse in terms of output. It means it's not about age. If you have a calling and you are youthful, step up and go for it. But go for it knowing clearly what it is that you want to do, so you do not come and go and get drafted into the wrong path. Keep the focus of what you want to do. And the youth have to create space. If I were to give my story as a youth, I had to push my way to be able to speak in meetings, almost grabbing microphones. But after one such or two such incidents, they started giving me the opportunity early, sort of like, get away with this nuisance so that the meeting can settle. It didn't matter which way they gave me the microphone. I made use of it. Yeah. And I was able to get elected. So the youth have to know everybody has to use their own method to get to the table. And if you allow me to comment on technology, legislation, and policy, technology is always ahead of policy, you know? So until innovations like the young innovator here came up with, get known and validated, then we will start having policy towards that, policy and legislation. The same thing, M-Pesa, when M-Pesa came, it was totally unregulated. It took time to get accepted, but because Safaricom was a powerful company which the government has a stake, they had an easier way. For the young innovator, I want to imagine that we must rely on a multi-pronged approach. Organizations like Ashoka, what support can you give to young innovators? Corporates like the Standard. How can people have private capital that helps to evaluate, validate, and market innovations? How can a young innovator get a lawyer to guide them so that their innovation is not swallowed? You may take to somebody to validate and they walk away with it. Yeah. So all these protections, what can we do? Because we are not short of innovators in this country. And I'm very impressed with what I've just had here. But I get impressed every day with the little things that are coming from our people, which can transform. Yes. Yeah, so, okay, so get ready to push your agenda if you're a young, upcoming politician.
Thank you for that.
We are there to mentor you, should you need mentoring.
Yes.
Yes.
So space is not given, it's taken. What do you think happens to young aspiring politicians who get into that field? Very solid, sober-minded, they have drive, and we saw this even from the last elections where we voted in a few new faces. But 5 years later, everyone asks the same question, what happened to this one? What happens when someone gets there and they get diverted, and how can you stay away from that diversion as a change maker?
I think they get sucked in by what is happening. But I do remember that when we entered parliament as opposition, maybe why we were not sucked in is, to begin with, there was bad relation between opposition and government. So chances of getting sucked in were nil. Everybody kept to their lane. In fact, the end of the first 5-year term, 97, is when we actually thought and now sat down as a group to help the country. But if you are value-driven, irrespective of where everybody else in your group is going, you must be ready to stand your ground. If you have convinced yourself, your heart and mind, that this is the way, you ought not to be swayed. And you can even manage to encourage others to be on your side. And if we take responsibility for making our world a better place, if we carry that responsibility wherever we go, then you will not drop the ball. And we really must encourage and re-energize one another from time to time so that we don't drop the ball. It's easy.
I like that you use the word again, re-energize. And you can't do that by yourself. It's collaborative. Like I've had so many speakers here say, you can't do it alone. It's collaborative. One of our panelists is joining us online. That's Dr. Florence Wambogo, who's the founder, director, and CEO of Africa Harvest Biotech Foundation International. You're most welcome, ma'am. You can hear us clearly.
Yes, I can hear you, Catherine. Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Thank you. Karibu sana. So, so we've been discussing with the panelists. I know you've been listening in for the last couple of minutes. So your work as a scientist, as a very eminent woman scientist in this continent is commendable. And my question to you first is, what are the benefits of biotechnology? Could you explain that a bit to the audience with us?
Maybe the first thing I should just do is to thank you and thank Ashoka for organizing, Vincent Bluth and team, and the other great Ashoka. Also thank the panelists that were talking. We recognize Honorable Mother Karoa, who we admire, and thank you for many of the comments she has made. I can identify a number of things she has said, and one of them is technology being ahead of the policy, which the young man is facing, and many of you are going to face, and most likely that's what biotechnology itself has faced in so many areas, because I think I was a pioneer, and let's say biotechnology is only a small component. I was born in a time when I felt there was a need to change many things for the frustrations or exactly being told there about agriculture here, the country as a continent And let me go a little bit and say that from my background, which is important for the young people, I came from a very rural background, like many of us, through University of Nairobi. Blessed by having sharp scientific mind, went through England and got a PhD in agriculture and in scientific innovation, like biotechnology, like virology. Got a PhD in a post PhD in the United States of America. Started working there, believe me, but God called me back. Literally felt I need to come back
there
to do something. And
lost her audio. As the tech team just looks into that, Dr. Mbogo, we shall be testing your audio privately, just so you can continue with that. But let me come to you, Kirago. The public and private sector, how can they work together? And I know they have been, but what more needs to be done for us to facilitate a much stronger social enterprise in this country?
Philanthropy, being private, going public. Government and the private sector, they have few things in common. Well, many things in common. One of the common things is that they seek to meet certain needs in society. The means is what differentiates them. So the government will use taxes to meet the public needs. The businesses will use their own capital to meet those needs. And so there's usually interface between the two. So for example, you find government would like to facilitate access to information to the public, for whether it's education. The private sector or technology companies or communication companies, they have capital to facilitate access to information. So they have certain way of meeting together to meet that need. And so what happens first is for the concept of public-private partnership, where sometimes you find that the private sector has skills, has capital, the government has the needs to meet with the population, but they have no capital. So one of the things that we would like to look at is how can then the private capital and the private skills and knowledge be utilized by government to meet public needs. And that is the major interface. So when you talk about social entrepreneurs, they have ideas, they have innovations, they would like to scale them up. They would like to meet certain needs in society, and that's how they've come up. The government is there on the other side. So one of the ways is to try and create that linkage, but also open the space by government, because sometimes you find that these new innovations, but the government is not comfortable in adopting those new innovations to validate them to the public. And so you still need to have certain spaces opened up by government with a changing of the regulations so that then the private sector can come in to meet that particular need. But also the other one is for government to always be open to the private sector. Now, one of the things to do is sometimes we get caught up in cliches. For example, saying the government is doing nothing, or saying the government will not listen to us, or we can't be able to reach out to the government. Sometimes, of course, they have some validity in that. But then it's just a matter of trying to think through how do we open up a space in government for us to fit in as the private sector. And I think that is the major area of conversation. And lastly, is also to educate the government. Now, the unmanned aerial vehicles, the drones, they were innovated by the private sector, and they just came up. And we were told you can take photographs, you can take videos up there, you can spray things. And so the question is for government, this is a new thing, how do we manage it? And so we cannot just blame the government that they're not adopting the drone technology, because the government is also careful about what if terrorists get hold of it? What if you intrude in people's privacy? So we also have to appreciate that the government is also trying to be objective in how to manage and adopt certain technology. So we must also educate the government and government officers. This is how things can happen. And by educating them, they can also adopt better regulatory framework. Thank you.
Very well understood. Is Dr. Mbogo back on?
I hope so. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, ma'am. So you are speaking to the advantages of biotechnology and clarifying that for us. Yes.
Yes, and I thought before that, let me say that the motivation of being biotechnology for my case, because the leadership is a very important thing. The reason I go there is not just to push technology. It is a bigger passion, a bigger purpose to increase food production in Kenya and Africa. I think where I left my very high level summary of my life to get to the biotechnology, because the question of young people is, why did she get there? How did this happen? First, there's a long track of scientific might and innovation. No, that is very, very important. But more interest is not the science, the technology, is what science can do for the people. And from my training in America and in Britain and all these places, I realized we can actually modernize our agriculture and it can make a difference. We need not import food that we can produce. And as we are talking now, because we're going to talk about biotechnology benefits, let me put in a bigger picture because it's touched here. As a country, as a continent, we are spending about $40 billion importing agricultural food crop we can produce in the country. Kenya is spending huge amount of money importing everything, maize, rice, whatever. Not that we can't do better than we are doing production, but again, it comes to leadership. I can agree completely with the Honorable Mother. Leadership is everything because policy decide how much money do we allocate to agriculture, how much money do we support local production, or importing is going to help us, corruption or what import. Some people want, by importing, some people benefit from importing, so they don't want to promote agriculture production in the country. And that's a major problem all over the continent. But let me go back to biotechnology. Why there? Let me tell you, there's no country can develop the agriculture without embracing scientific innovations. You have seen how we have leapfrogged into the future by just having a cell phone or having innovation like the one we are talking about, the young man, just about everything. And agriculture needs the same. Why we have been importing food from these countries is they did embrace scientific innovations. And biotechnology is one of them. And the biotechnology cuts across all the way to something we used to do. Traditional fermentation of porridge is biotechnology. Local brewing is biotechnology. We are using life. Bio is life and technology together. It's bio and life and technology combined. In agriculture, where I want to focus on, even yogurt is biotechnology. You're using life forms, which is bacteria, which are friendly. Now, when we come to agriculture, there are several stages where biotechnology has a lot of benefits. One of them is as simple as tissue culture. I'll give you an example. When I came with a lot of experiences out there, which I knew would help us in Kenya and in Africa, I realized in terms of the high-level genetic modification technology, the technology, the policy was far behind compared to America, to other countries, to South Africa, where they are benefiting. That it was a very big uphill battle. And so I decided, okay, let me champion things that you can see farmers can embrace. And I brought in the issue of tissue culture because I realized that's something that was not happening in the country. Our banana orchards were devastated by diseases. And by going to the laboratory to produce the seedlings from the lab, we could be able to have benefits, first, disease-free material. You can have we could have numbers which were limiting because the traditional way of doing things is banana is one small sucker, and from one you cannot have 2, 3, but tissue culture, you can make 1,000 out of this. They are uniform, they are high yielding because they have the vigor, and you can actually be able to make it a business because they can also, again, come to harvest at the same time. And I think that is something in this country, I can tell you that championing we did over 10 years ago, Kenya was not a banana producing country. We used to import our bananas from Uganda. But because of the incremental gains, and even in Magakarwa's constituents, we planted out of Tichukaja banana, and now Kirinyaga is a banana producing country. Meru, Honorable Keraitu is already cognizing, Meru was running out of banana. We innovated that all the way to Kisii. We have innovated banana production in partnership, not alone, with the Kenya Agriculture Research Institute and others, but we champion the technology. That's something farmers now is a normal business. Know that when I want to plant banana, I go to the laboratory or clean orchards and do that. Are they benefiting? So clear benefits as a business, as fruit being available for everybody in the country, banana being plenty because the technology remove the bottleneck of seed, remove the bottleneck of availability of material. We championed also the management because that's important. And that's one example. The other example I'll give is in sorghum. Sorghum is
Dr. Ambogo, just thank you for that. We will come to that second example in a few minutes. Just stay online so we can get to hear more from the other panelists here. Honorable Martha Karua, your thoughts on women or the role of women as change makers. Is affirmative action a prerequisite for women to be in leadership?
It's a tool to increase the number. It's a tool to increase the number, but it is not the only way women can get to leadership. And leadership of women is seen in non-traditional spaces. Professor Wambogo has just talked about banana growing. Who are growing the bananas countrywide? It's mainly women. And banana farming now has become a profitable venture. Actually, what undermines agriculture is that it's not on the average profitable. So if farmers are helped with post harvest services and marketing and storage and support services, you know, when they are going about their farming activities, it then becomes profitable. But returning to women, women are occupying many spaces as leaders. Why we need affirmative action is to accelerate the numbers, and instead of making women a once occurrence or something, you know, whenever there is a woman somewhere, people wonder whether this is legitimate. We want to make it the norm, not the exception. And that's why we go for affirmative action as a route to accelerate. And if you look at the recent nomination of Justice Martha Koome to be Chief Justice, you can see the conversations. Although it's been very positive, you can almost hear a silent question, whether this is for real. We would want the space to be occupied, leadership space, to be occupied by both genders in all spaces at the highest level, such that such questions do not come. The only question we should be hearing is whether one is competent, not their gender.
Yeah. And whether it's by merit as well. Thank you for that. Charles, the media's role in disseminating this information, especially what you're getting here today, what ways are there? Because you realize, especially with the young generation, the traditional means is no longer applicable to them. So now everyone is on the digital spaces and it's crowded. And yet your organization has a role in still being visible in those non-traditional spaces or the innovative spaces. So what opportunities are there for change makers who would wish to play in that?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Standard Group made a conscious decision to become a digital company. Now that is in recognition of the fact that our audiences had changed. Well, we are the oldest media house, but I can guarantee you we are the youngest at heart. Right now, and in the room, we have one of my colleagues who is a member of the innovations team. We actually created an innovations department to constantly create those new innovations. So you'll find that our engagement through digital platform, through the mobile phone, is actually, I think, one of the most advanced. I can share this with you. Just this afternoon, we'll be launching our new look e-paper. But in all respects, what we have appreciated is the fact that we must look at where the audiences have moved and provide solutions for them. So some of those platforms, online platforms, are actually being recrafted now to become very specific to the needs of those specific audiences. For instance, you've been talking about agriculture here. We have a whole platform, website and apps that speak to that. Now, obviously, just to give an example again on agriculture, a lot of young people are getting into agriculture. And I can guarantee you, we should not, in the coming weeks, have a situation where anyone has to complain that there's an innovation and it's not been amplified. they can come directly to us because we are creating those very specific solutions for them. We have reorganized ourselves into different specific sectoral desks. And there is an agricultural desk. That is something that you don't find elsewhere. We are employing agriculturalists. We're actually employing innovators. Before we would just need a journalist. So having those platforms will help us to engage. Now, if the youth out there cannot access training, for instance, and you just don't know where to access this, the government may not be in a position to provide it, as we know. So what we have done is worked collaboratively with institutions like CalDRAW and actually created training modules that can be accessed online. Now, that is just one example around agriculture, and the same applies to general areas of interest in education generally. So we've moved where the audiences are. We know that in other cases, we must go to the ground, and we've been able to actually organize forums where various community groups, various interest groups come in for an education session. Now, this is not the usual information dissemination and consumption. So we want to get in there, and we've provided those platforms, but also to be fair, radio is still very strong in this country, and we have used that quite effectively. So it is all a combination of the various platforms that we use, because we know no one human being consumes media only through one channel.
Right.
Thank you.
What's coming out is, this is for all the change makers online and even here, that there's no excuse for accessibility, or you can no longer say after this that you did not know or you do not know. You've heard Honorable Martha offer opportunities for mentorship for those who are interested in getting into the leadership and governance space. You have heard the organizations that Kirago works with, that's CAM and KEPSA. And you've also now heard about Standard Group and what has to be offered for Changemaker. So it is really up to you to take that personal initiative to find your way, meander to these people who have something that you need, which is really good. Those are the opportunities that, courtesy of Ashoka, our panelists are giving. Hannah, is philanthropy a preserve of the wealthy?
I think I discussed earlier that each of us has been a philanthropist. And what I can say is that we have different kinds of groups that are organizing themselves right now, especially the young people that are doing great things in this continent. For instance, when the girls were taken in Nigeria, you may recall that it was a lot of young people who came together through social media and not waiting for anybody's funding, and started to work towards getting the girls back. There are a lot of initiatives that are going on in this region. In fact, I can say there's a song that says, it's time for Africa. I think it's time for Africa because we have a really vibrant youth who are very innovative and who are restless, who want change. And I know that they will.
Just for that mini interruption. So we were with you, Hannah.
Yeah.
You were talking about the movement of young people on social media. You're giving that example.
Yeah. Okay. So I also wanted to mention that with all this growth going on in Africa, we have an emerging middle class who are also ready to give. So it's not just the rich that give, but you also have a number of people. We have a big emerging middle class in this region that is ready to give. We have governments asking corporates to be more look at social impact and ensure that whatever they are working, there's some CSR going on. We have the East African Philanthropy Network, which is a network of institutions that are doing philanthropy in this region. And I think one of the things is that the youth need to get involved in just seeing if we can get a philanthropy award for young people. Who is the most philanthropic young person? So I think everyone can come into philanthropy. It's not for the rich. And I think that anything that comes from the rich might come with maybe a hidden agenda, but when we give among ourselves, then we'll not be thinking that we are looking for a hidden agenda or anything.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I believe that giving calls for a lot of accountability. When you get money from the rich, then you will really be filling forms and everything. When we give to our community, we want to see that the things that are close to our hearts are taken care of. That is accountability for us.
I like that. You've actually brought something I wanted Honorable Martha Karua to speak to. She mentioned it twice actually in your keynote speech on the need for accountability and how that seems to be lacking in this day and age. And for everyone in social enterprise, all the social entrepreneurs that you have online and even present, what is the value? What is the value of being accountable first to yourself and to the cause that you stand for?
I think the value of accountability is ensuring that whatever it is, whether it is time or money, is used for the intended purpose. And the value of it is also the ability now to deliver the results. Because if things go as planned, then the results will be there. And that accountability, as you have indicated, first, be accountable to yourself. It means that you stay the course. And let everybody hold their accountability bar higher. It means that the community we are serving, the association we are members of, everybody will be holding us to account. I always imagine for the leadership, if the clubs or social places they retreat to in the evening, they are called out, congratulated for things they did right, and called out for things they did wrong. It would be so hot, the impunity would get them. When we don't hold people accountable, we actually strengthen impunity. And I think that's one of the effects that we are suffering in this country. So it is important to be accountable to ourselves, and we encourage the community, sensitive, to always demand accountability.
Yeah, thank you for that contribution. I'll give each of you 30 seconds to put a close to this, starting with you, Mr. Ashira.
I would just like to encourage the entrepreneurs and innovators to seek out for networks with government and networks with the private sector organizations and networks with individuals who are already change makers, not necessarily in their field, but in other fields, because that way they can be able to have more doors opened for them. And lastly, just to be patient, because some of the systems take longer to change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Martha.
I think just to recognize that change making involves us, not I, not me. It has to involve us. And that when we set out as change makers, we are helping the world around us, but ourselves as well. What if you had everything you wanted and there is poverty all around you? How will you enjoy what you have? And the best example is this Corona season. If the least in the community around you is afflicted, it's coming to you. So you got to worry, and that's something I'm not seeing in the Western world, except the very good news that the US president has shown leadership in accepting to push for opening up of patent law so that the vaccines can be easily accessible. So philanthropy, the goal is to help others, but you actually end up, some of that good comes back to you. So improving our world, not my world, our world. So this is for us.
I love it. Charles?
Yes, for me, it is important that we recognize the media's role. We want to make it clear that we do not want the media to be the weak link in creating the future that we all desire. From the perspective of the Standard Media Group, I can confirm that we have taken the decision to become change makers ourselves. So we want to walk along with all the other change makers. I saw from the map that there's a gap around just our ability to network as change makers, and we want to take the lead in making this possible. We have invested quite heavily in a lot of our media and beyond media, and these investments, these assets, are actually for the benefit of Kenya, for the benefit of our community, for the benefit of our young people who are innovating. So I wish to encourage all of them to come on board and work with us. And we are very willing to work with them, amplify the work they are doing, create the connections for them, but also importantly is work collaboratively with all the other organizations and also with government and the county governments as well to create this new world that we all so desire. So the media is taking the lead, and the Standard Group, I can assure you, is right at the front. So we are ready, and we are just confirming at this forum that indeed we will do whatever is possible to bring about this change.
Thank you very much, Charles. And Hannah, as we also prepare to go to Dr. Ambogo.
I just want to urge the young people in this gathering that money should not stop you from being a change maker. You may have an idea that you feel that might change the world, but you're scared because you're thinking of money. Like the rest of the panelists say, your networks, you now know me, you can reach out to me. I may know somebody else who might know somebody who might be able to support you in whatever way. And also look within your community. You'll be surprised how much they want to invest in some of these innovations. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Hannah. Do we still have Dr. Ambogo online?
Yes, you do. Hi.
Yes,
Hello.
yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I think if there's a place we need change makers, really is in agriculture. And because this is the place now, to me, I believe the young people have the greatest opportunity. The potential is so great, but I feel like it's open. And what I'm seeing in the agriculture, and there are so many potential innovation. When I hear like what the Standard Group is saying, the people in that panel, the networks that are needed to break through our agriculture. So we stop importing, we stop not having we stop the innovation that we really need. Sorry about that. There's so much potential in agriculture, and there are so many young people. What we need to move to is towards now what I call online digital platform, moving agriculture online digital, making agriculture a business, entrepreneurship. And the last 5 years, really, I've been very much involved in youth mentorship. First, I was doing it in the church, mentoring almost 600 youth and so on. But now we have worked with the Shoka, and I've got even our own organization, Africa Harvest. We're really moving into that area of online digital work to train and mentor and reach beyond just groups of youth. But you know that I see agricultural innovations to play along. We can't go the traditional way of farming. It has to be a business, the business that young people can make money with. And that's where now the biotechnology aspects, all the innovation aspects comes in. Because the way that transition was not made. You have young farmers, and then you have the old farmers, the others who have farming coffee or what. We need to bridge that digital. It's like you have the analog on one side of the traditional farmers, and now the young farmers. The young farmers are very visionary. They can see business in livestock, or keeping poultry, keeping chicken, keeping many areas. They can see in farming, they can do work in the greenhouse. There are many innovations. But what is also needed there is mentorship, because everything works in a value chain. If you're going to be an innovator in agriculture, if you say today I'm going to grow tomatoes, I see an opportunity there. There is beyond growing tomatoes. There is the seed aspect, there's the disease aspect to be managed, there's a marketing aspect, there is a fertilizer aspect, there is where do I find the land, or if I have the land, the seasonality, when is the best time to do it. So in this area of innovation, the networks, the change makers who are going to break through are those who are going to be innovative, but realize the networks are needed within the whole value chain, and also realize that agriculture has become digital. Agriculture and agriculture innovations have to be done as a business that has got to make returns, and it has to capture the young mind. And so that to me is one of my major contributions.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mbogo. Unfortunately, our time has run out, but we have gleaned more or less similar things from these different captains of industry. Network, seek mentorship, and you cannot do it alone. It's collaborative, it's partnerships, talk to one another. And I couldn't have put all of that more. I love that we have been able to mine those gems from our panelists, as well as understand that to be a change maker, it really just starts with you. So I thank you all for participating. A huge thank you to our panelists as well. Thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge. And at this point in time, before we release you from stage, I want to invite the regional director for Ashoka East Africa for the official launch of the Changemaker map. So could you please come on stage so that we are the panelists and also the lead Changemaker Ashoka come on stage. We could just stand. Okay. Arnold has a word for our online audience as well. You want to take that?
Hi, everyone who's joining online. You can now take on to the breakout session, as we are going to also have our breaking room here. Thank you.
Where? Okay. Okay, I'm informed our incoming Chief Justice is present. Lady Justice Martha Koome, you are most welcome. We are privileged to have you here and would like you here for the photo session as well. And congratulations. This is a streak for women in this nation. Round of applause. Do we have the other panelists from the second session? Is that you, David? Yes. Care Africa, Kenya, please come. Let's take some nice photos as we launch this report. Is the Vice Chancellor designate here? Oh, he left? He's just left, it's fine. So we are just having a photo session as we exchange the Changemaker report as was presented by Arnold earlier on. Yes, there you go. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the report. This one you have to give a huge round of applause. Like bigger than that. I was about to say they smile, then, you know. You're smiling. It can be seen in your eyes. You're smizing. Well done. Well done. Photographers, you okay with the photos? Are you sure you have captured everyone? Thank you very much. Thank you. Vincent, you can do the elbow shake with the panelists. So we capture that. We capture the photos with the elbow shake. Don't miss out on the photos. Yes, good job, Ashoka. And I believe those are your copies to keep. Thank you very, very, very much. We take a very short break now, and we'll be back in a bit. Panelists, asanteni sana. We'll be going to the lounge. Oh, Zara is there to lead you.